Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine a world where, well, pretty much every single action, from how you walk into a room to the size of your sitting cushion,
Yeah.
it's all governed by this code of conduct.
Yeah.
And not just any code, right? But one that actually evolved through like real life drama, mistakes, maybe even a little bit of ancient palace intrigue.
Definitely.
Today, we're taking a deep dive into the fascinating world of early Buddhist monastic rules, specifically this collection called the Pācittiya.
Indeed. And these aren't just, abstract ideas handed down. They're direct responses to actual situations that happened.
Right.
They shaped how monks interacted with society, how they managed their day-to-day lives.
Yeah.
And what's really fascinating, I think, is how these rules, which often started out pretty broad,
Yeah.
they were refined, nuanced, because of specific incidents. It reveals such a deep understanding of, well, human nature, and also how important public perception was.
Absolutely. So our mission in this deep dive is basically to pull out those surprising bits of knowledge, those insights from these ancient texts. You'll see how even like seemingly tiny details could spark these huge discussions about reputation, integrity, the spirit of the path itself. It's kind of a shortcut, maybe, to understanding the layers of thought behind it all.
You get these real aha moments.
Exactly, moments you might not expect. Okay, so let's kick things off with a particularly juicy one. It involves a king, a queen, and potentially a very awkward encounter.
Ah, yes.
We're looking at Pācittiya LXX III, which is about entering royal quarters. It starts in Savatthi. King Pasenadi Kosala is getting ready to visit his pleasure garden,
Right.
and his gardener finds the Buddha there meditating with a lay follower.
And this lay follower, an upasaka, very devout, he's deep in contemplation with the Buddha.
Okay.
So when the king turns up and sits down, the upasaka, out of just sheer reverence for the Buddha, doesn't bow, doesn't stand up for the king.
Ooh, okay. I can see how that might go down.
Exactly. King Pasenadi is not pleased. He sees it as disrespect.
Yeah. But here's where it gets really interesting. The Buddha, he senses the king's irritation, right?
Yeah.
And he explains, look, this upasta, he's learned, he knows the scriptures, he's detached from sensual pleasures.
And that completely changes the king's view, just like that.
Instantly. The king's impressed now, so impressed. He asks the upasaka to teach the dharma to the women in his palace, the Ithagara.
But the upasaka, showing real humility, says no. He says, look, I only know what the monks have taught me. You'd be better off asking a monk.
Okay, fair enough.
So the king asks the Buddha to send a monk. And the Buddha picks Venerable Ananda, his attendant.
Right, Ananda. So Ananda goes to the palace, but here's the twist. He walks straight into the royal sleeping chamber, unannounced.
Unannounced.
Queen Malika sees him, jumps up quickly. Her bright yellow robe is mentioned. It's quite a scene.
Yeah. And Ananda, probably realizing immediately how inappropriate this is, or maybe the potential for misunderstanding, he just backs out.
Right, wisely.
He later tells the other monks what happened.
And that incident becomes the reason for a major rule.
Exactly. The Buddha first admonishes Ananda, tells him off, basically. And then he lays out 10 specific dangers, 10 reasons why a monk shouldn't just wander into a royal palace or sleeping chamber without warning.
10 dangers. That's quite specific. What sort of things?
Oh, they're incredibly insightful about the social dynamics. Things like suspicions of affairs if a monk and queen are seen smiling at each other, or the king suspecting a monk if a jewel goes missing, or even if secret palace plans get leaked.
Wow. Okay, so it's not just about personal conduct, it's about political intrigue, too.
Absolutely. It gets even more detailed. Like, the king might suspect a monk if a concubine gets pregnant, thinking, well, no one else came in here except the recluse.
Yikes.
Or get this, if the king makes unpopular decisions like appointments or dismissals, or even if military campaigns go badly.
The public might blame the monk just for being associated with the palace.
Precisely. Just by association. Plus, the sheer luxury of the place. Elephants, chariots, all the sensual delights. It was just considered unfitting for a recluse.
So the rule, Pācittiya LXX3 ends up saying a monk commits an offense if they enter unannounced past the Indakila, basically the doorpost of the sleeping chamber if the king or queen are still inside.
Right. Even the first foot over the threshold is a minor offense. The second foot makes it major.
It really shows this deep concern for reputation, doesn't it? Avoiding scandal, respecting boundaries, managing public perception.
It's all about discretion and protecting the integrity of the whole community.
Okay, so that's about discretion, reputation. But what about just like basic safety? Let's shift to Pācittiya LXXXE. This one covers entering a village at the wrong time. And this rule also has a fascinating evolution.
It really does. So initially you have this group of monks, the Vagga, the group of 6. They pop up a lot in these stories, often as the ones breaking the rules.
The usual suspects.
Kind of, yeah. So they enter a village after midday, which was considered the wrong time, and they're in the assembly hall having animal talk, basically worldly gossip, not spiritual discussion.
Okay. And people complained.
Yep, people complained they were acting just like householders, not monks.
So the Buddha initially forbade entering a village after midday until sunrise. Simple enough.
Seems simple. But then you get an incident. Some monks are traveling, they reach a village late, people invite them in, but the monks say no because of the rule.
And what happens? Let me guess.
They get robbed right outside the village.
Oh, no. Okay, so the rule was too rigid.
Exactly. It had immediate negative practical consequences. So the Buddha amended it. Monks could enter at the wrong time, but they had to announce it first.
Announce it to who?
Good question. Because then another monk, traveling alone, gets robbed because there was no one to announce it to. He followed the amended rule, didn't enter, and bam, robbed again.
Wow. So the rule needed another tweak. This is like real-time software patching.
Haha, sort of. So the clarification came. You need to announce it to a present monk, someone you can actually ask or tell.
Okay. But what if there's no other monk? Or, like, an emergency?
Right. That led to the final amendment. You can enter without announcing in urgent cases. The example given is a monk getting bitten by a snake and another monk needing to rush into the village to get fire, probably for making medicine.
Oh, okay.
It really shows how pragmatic the whole system is trying to be. Rules are meant to help, support well-being, not create impossible situations.
It's that balance again, isn't it? Discipline, but also compassion and just common sense.
Exactly. So moving from navigating society to, well, stuff. Material possessions.
Yeah, let's talk about stuff. How did they regulate even small items? First up, Pācittiya LX64, handling jewels. How did this one start?
It starts with a monk bathing in the Asiravati River. He spots a Brahmin's purse on the bank. Looks like it has 500 units of currency.
Okay, what does he do?
Well, he picks it up thinking he'll stop it from being lost or stolen. Good intention, right?
It seems like it.
The Brahmin comes back. The monk gives him the purse. But the Brahmin claims it had 1,000, not 500. He's basically trying to scam the monk.
Oh, lovely. So the monk's good deed gets punished.
Pretty much. And this leads the Buddha to initially say, monks shouldn't pick up any jewels or anything considered jewel-like, full stop.
Just don't touch it. Again, seems a bit broad.
It was. And predictably, another situation comes up. Visakha Migaramata, a really important female lay follower.
Yes, I know the name.
She's heading to a festival, but decides to visit the Buddha first. She gives her maid a bundle of her ornaments to hold, and the maid forgets it at the monastery.
Ah, so the monks find this bundle of jewels.
Right, and they're stuck. The rule says don't touch, so they report it to the Buddha.
And this leads to Amendment number 1.
Exactly. Amendment 1. Monks can pick up jewels or similar items if it's within the monastery grounds, charma. They should put it away safely so the owner can get it back. The offense is only if it's picked up outside the monastery.
Okay, that sounds more practical. But wait, there's more.
There's one more refinement. Some monks are having a meal as guests in an Anathapitika's village. Afterwards, the attendant who served them accidentally leaves his ring behind.
And the monks see it.
They see it, but they hesitate to leave because they're outside the monastery in a dwelling, and the rule says don't pick up outside. So they just stay there, guarding the ring.
Oh, for goodness sake. Okay, so this obviously needed fixing, too.
Right. So the Buddha expands the area again. The final rule allows picking up jewels or jewel-like things within the monastery or within a dwelling. Ashramava, ashavatha.
Okay.
And there's a proper procedure.
Yeah.
Mark it, declare you found something, return it if the owner identifies it, and if you have to leave, entrust it to someone suitable.
That shows a really nice balance, doesn't it? Non-attachment, sure, but also just being responsible for other people's things.
Exactly. Very nuanced.
Okay, so from treasures, let's go to tools. Pācittiya LXXX6, about needle case material. This one apparently has quite a sad backstory with a toothmaker.
It does, yeah. A local toothmaker, probably working with bone or ivory, offered to make needle cases for the monks. A nice gesture.
Sounds helpful.
But then our group of 6 monks...
Oh, them again?
Yep. They start asking for tons of them. And not just many, but all different sizes, big ones, small ones. They're just being demanding.
So they overwhelmed the craftsman.
Totally. He got so busy making these needle cases for the monks that he couldn't make his other goods to sell. He couldn't support his family, and they started to suffer financially.
That's terrible. And the community noticed.
The community noticed and complained, these monks are insatiable, they're exploiting this poor guy.
So the Buddha stepped in.
He did. He forbade needle cases made from specific materials, bone, ivory, especially elephant ivory or horn. Making one, or even asking someone else to make one from these materials, became a cutting-off offense.
A cutting-off offense. What did that mean in practice?
It meant the item itself had to be destroyed or fundamentally altered, cut down in this case. It wasn't just about the monk's action, but removing the object of luxury or exploitation.
So it's about moderation, avoiding greed, but also like fair trade almost, not exploiting artisans.
That's a great way to put it. It's about the impact of your consumption, not just the thing itself. Use simple, practical materials.
This theme of moderation definitely carries over into furnishings. Pācittiya LXXXEF, bed and chair leg height. What was going on there?
Well, there was a monk named Upananda Sakyaputta who had a particularly high bed or chair. Maybe he liked the view.
Huh, maybe.
So the Buddha visits his dwelling, and Upananda invites the Buddha to lie down on this high bed.
How did the Buddha react?
He apparently just saw the high bed and turned back, saying something like, "A foolish person can be known by his reclining posture." A bit of a burn, really.
Ouch. Okay, so that led to a rule.
Yep. New beds or chairs shouldn't have legs higher than 8 suga fingers. It's a specific measurement, not counting the lower crossbar bit. If they were higher, it was another cutting off offense. The legs had to be literally cut down to size.
Keeping things simple, keeping things humble. And then Pācittiya LXX8, stuffed beds and chairs. Let me guess. The group of 6.
You got it. They were making their beds and chairs all soft and comfy, stuffing them with cotton.
What's wrong with a bit of comfort?
Well, again, people visiting the monastery complained. They said these monks were living like householders enjoying sensual pleasures. It didn't look like renunciation.
Ah, the perception thing again?
Exactly. Monastic life was meant to be austere. So the Buddha forbade beds or chairs stuffed with the 3 kinds of cotton available. Then tree cotton, creeper cotton, or silk cotton. Making one or getting one made was a tearing out offense.
Tearing out, so you had to.
You had to literally pull the stuffing out. Remove the luxury.
Wow. Okay, so maintaining that appearance of simplicity was paramount, even in private comforts. This leads us nicely into rules about clothes and covers. Pācittiya LXXE9X, sitting cloth size.
Same pattern here. The Vagga monks again, they were making their sitting cloths way too big, dragging them around. People complained.
So the Buddha set a standard size.
Yes. 2 sugata spans long by 1.5 wide. Although later they added an extra span for the fringe because Monk Udai, who was apparently quite a large man, found the original size a bit small. It kept, slipping.
Haha, okay. A practical adjustment. And similar rules for other cloths, like the itch cover size in Pācittiya XC.
Exactly the same logic.
Yeah.
Monks were making those oversized too. So the Buddha set a standard. 4 spans long by 2 wide. This was specifically for covering ailments, rashes or sores between the navel and the knee.
Right. And the rainy season robe size, Pācittiya XCI.
Standardized again.
Yeah.
6 spans long by 2.5 wide. All of these were cutting off offenses. If you made them bigger, the excess had to be cut off.
Okay, finally, Pācittiya XCI, the Sugata robe size. This one involves the Buddha's cousin, Nanda, the really handsome one.
That's the one. Nanda was apparently quite striking, and he started wearing a robe that was the exact same size as the Buddha's own robe.
And why was that a problem?
Well, some elder monks saw Nanda from a distance. Because the robe was the Buddha's size, they mistook him for the Buddha. So they stood up, showing respect, as they would for the Buddha. Then they realized it was just Nanda, and they were displeased. It caused confusion, maybe undermined the proper respect hierarchy.
So it wasn't about Nanda trying to be the Buddha necessarily, but about avoiding confusion.
Exactly. So the Buddha set a standard size for a monk's robe.
Yeah.
They called it the Sugata robe size, just for measurement, not suggesting monks should copy the Buddha's actual robe. It was 9 spans long by 6 wide, making one larger than that. Another cutting off offense.
It had to be cut down. It's just amazing, isn't it? How many of these very specific rules came directly from these real lived experiences, these social interactions, and this constant need to manage how the community was perceived.
Absolutely. And if we, try to connect this to the bigger picture, these Pācittiya rules, they really show us this dynamic, responsive system of ethics.
Yeah.
They weren't just commandments set in stone. They were constantly being refined, adapted, based on very practical challenges, just based on human nature, human failings, and always with this crucial eye on maintaining the community's integrity and, importantly, the public's trust, especially in the society they lived in.
What really stands out to you from all this? For me, I think it's how these ancient stories almost give us a blueprint for thinking about regulations today in any kind of group or organization.
How so?
Well, they show that rules need to be flexible, right? They need to adapt when unforeseen things happen, but you still need to uphold those core values. It's all about finding that balance, isn't it? Between sticking to the letter of the law and, well, adapting practically.
That is the essential tension, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder, how do these historical examples, this process of adapting rules to keep community integrity and public trust, how does that resonate today?
Yeah.
In our modern institutions, maybe even in our own personal ethics? Where do you, listening now, find that balance between strict adherence on one hand and practical adaptation on the other, in any system of conduct you follow or create?
That's definitely something to mull over.
Something to think about until our next deep dive.